idcwoodcraft.com. Hello, my CNC brother or sister. I'm Garrett with IDC Woodcraft, your CNC router bit supply company. This video is going to take you step by step through how to design a pizza peel. Yes, this is a beginner's video that's going to turn you into an advanced beginner. What I'm going to do is teach you how to come up with the shape and then come up with this taper. Most people look at this taper in such a complex way, and it is so stinking easy, it's not funny, and you're going to learn exactly how to do that in this video. Then we're going to round this thing out on the CNC. See, we got some nice rounded edges here, and we're going to drill that hole with a nice rounded area there. And when you're done, you're going to have this awesome pizza peel off your CNC router, and you're going to be ultra proud. And it's going to be so much fun to watch this thing cut out. So we're going to dive into my software, Vectric VCarve Pro. Now, I want to tell you, you don't have to have my software in order to make this work for you. You just need to have a certain feature in your design software to make this work for you. You're going to be blown away how easy it is to do a taper. So that alone is going to make you an advanced beginner. So we're going to dive into my software. We're going to start walking through this whole thing. You're going to come away from this video knowing more than people who have been working with design software for a year, because that's how deep I go. Just put it this way, you'll learn more than what you would have learned in 50 YouTube videos. That's a bona fide promise. So we're going to dive right in and get rolling, design up this cool pizza peel, and you're going to be floored with how easy it is to make a taper. We are now in the Vectric design software, and I want to remind you that you do not have to have Vectric in order to do this. You just have to have the V carving capability where you can carve out letters with a V-bit. That is the minimum requirement in order for you to do this the easy way to create this taper on your pizza peel. But we're going to walk through this, like I said, step by step, and you're going to learn a ton of things along the way. So let's get rocking. First, we need to create a new file. So we're going to select the new file, and we have to set up our parameters for a project piece. This is going to be a single-sided job. Make sure you select that if you have that two-sided option. And as far as the material size, we're going to be making this pizza peel out of a 16-inch wide by 24-inch tall piece of material. So width, we need to put in 16, which is here. For the height, we want 24. For the thickness, it's a little bit of a different story. You can see on the material that I have, the pine, it is actually labeled at 3/4 of an inch thick. However, it is actually almost 5/8 of an inch thick, meaning it's almost 1/8 of an inch less. Now, this is pretty typical when you're buying something from the hardware store, and exactly why you need to have a pair of calipers in your CNC router bit toolkit. This particular set of calipers is the one that I recommend. It's a very good, solid set of calipers, and it is available on Amazon. I've put a link down below in the description so you can get it. There's links for everything that I'm going to be talking about in this video, including this file, which I am going to give to you with the G-code. I will give you instructions in the file when you download it. Just follow the instructions, and it'll have links to everything you need as well. The material thickness, since it's almost 1/8 of an inch under, 0.68, we are going to compensate for that, and I am going to change the thickness to a 0.7. I'm actually going a little bit deeper than the actual thickness of the material because I want the bit to actually cut through it. I'm using a 1/4 inch compression end mill to cut this project out. I'll explain to you what that is and why I'm using it a little bit later. Just suffice it to say, I want to go a little bit deeper. I'm going to cut into the spoil board. I am okay with that. So we are going to the material surface, and we're going to set our XY datum at the middle of the project and click OK. So now our basic project is set. Before we go any further, we want to save the project. Vectric does not have an autosave feature, so if you've worked into it quite a bit and for some reason your computer quits on you, you are going to regret it because you will not be able to find your project because it didn't have an automatic backup. Vectric, from what I understand, has tried, but they had some challenges with that, so it is now our responsibility to make sure we save our project. So every time you start a project, save it. So I am going to go up to the Save button. We don't need to go to the upper menu File. We are simply going to come to the File Operations area and click Save. When you click that, you want to save it into whatever directory you have. So you can see I have Pizza Peel already set up, and I've got several files, but that's because I've been practicing. So we're going to just give this a name, Pizza Peel Final. And I'm going to save that. Now we have saved the project, and you will need to remember to save it periodically as you move along by just selecting the Save button. Just get in the habit of clicking that button whenever you think about it. Now we're ready to start designing up the Pizza Peel. And we're going to do this from the very basic elements. We're going to build it up and give it a lot of curves and character to it. And we're going to build in that taper. I want to go over to the final design briefly and show you what we have to do, the way we need to think about this when you are starting your project. You want to think of all the elements that you want to put into your project. We have the pizza surface, the handle, the drilled hole in the handle. You see there's a little bit of roundedness on that drilled hole. That's going to be done with what's called a form tool. We have the rounded forming, or the round over along the edge of the project. You can see it more right here. Then we have the taper. The first thing we're going to do is build out the core basic shape and then start to add form to it. So we'll switch back over to the project area that we're working on. The first thing to remember is we have a maximum width of 16 inches and a maximum height of 23. So we're going to take advantage of virtually all that material. So the width is going to actually be 15 inches on the finished project, and the overall length will be 23 inches on the finished project. The first thing we're going to do is create the base pizza area and the handle using two rectangles. Go to the rectangle function of your software and select it. In the Vectric software, we want to make sure that we have selected the center anchor point on the rectangle. And we want the rectangle to start from the 0, 0 point of your X and Y. If these numbers are not 0, simply click into the box and enter 0. You don't have to put a decimal point for 0. Just put a 0 in there. Same with the Y. Make sure the square is selected, and we are going to set up our width and our height of our rectangle for our pizza platform, and then we'll set it up for the handle. The width of the pizza platform is going to be 15 inches, which means the height will be 15 inches, but we also need to account for the taper. So we're going to add another 2 inches for the taper. So we'll type in 17 and click Create. And now you can see we have a rectangle formed on the project. And now we're going to do the handle. Typical handles are 1.5 to 2 inches wide. So we're going to come back into the rectangle area with the width and change that number to 2 for the width. The overall length of a handle, you typically don't want to get a handle any shorter than 5 inches long. We're going to type in 7 just to give us extra length and click Create. Now we have a second rectangle in our project. Close the Draw Rectangle function, and now we've got to get these rectangles put into position for the pizza flat area and the handle itself. And we want to take these all the way to almost the edge of the material. We're going to go 1/2 inch short of the edge of the material on the top for the pizza peel, pizza platform area, where the taper is going to end up right here at the very top of it. And the very bottom of the handle will be 1/2 inch from the end of the material. We want to set this up so we can position it exactly where we want it to be. And by doing that, we're going to use something called guidelines or construction lines. And those are very easily placed. You notice in the Vectric software, there is a scale or ruler along the top of the project and the left of the project. We can go hover our mouse right into the scale and hold your left mouse button down and then drag down. And you see now I'm dragging a line. This is a construction line that we are now creating. I'm going to stop for just a second. In this little instruction I just gave you about the construction line, I told you to use your mouse to click and hold and drag that line down. I've done a lot of one-on-one training sessions with creators, and one of the things that I run into far too often is they don't use the mouse. They end up using the touchpad on their computer. The mouse has so many tools that will make your life so much easier in doing the design work. You won't have to use the scroll bars on the bottom or on the side. You can pan the screen around. I have a video that actually talks about that, tells you how to use your mouse that way, and a link to go get a mouse. If you don't use a mouse and you're trying to work with the vector design software or any design software, you are working yourself extra hard. Get a mouse. Down in the description is a link to a video that will explain this to you, and you will understand how much easier it is to have a mouse. Okay, let's get back to the construction lines. Get a mouse. When I let that go, now I have this dashed gray line that is in the project. I can do the same thing with the side scale or the up and down. I go into the ruler and then hold my mouse button down and drag out, and now I have created an up and down construction line. Now I don't need the one that is left and right, I only want the one that's up and down. So in order to get rid of that, there are two ways you can do it. First, you have to hover over it, and you know that you're locked onto it when your cursor turns into a side-to-side arrow or an up and down arrow. When it's set like that, you can right-click, and a menu will pop up, and it says Guide Properties, and the very top button says Delete Guide, and that is deleting the selected guide that we clicked on, which was the up and down guide. So I'm not going to click that. I'm going to show you the easier way to delete this guide, which is basically hover over it until you have your arrow and simply drag it back into the ruler. And now that guide no longer exists. I can come over into the project area, push down on the scroll wheel on my mouse, and move the entire project, or called panning, and you see that Guideline is no longer existent at all, even though I drug it off to the side. So that's how you get guides in there. But the idea is, how do you place the guides properly? There are a couple ways. One, you can hover over the guide, hold your left mouse button down and start to drag it, and there will be numbers that pop up next to the cursor. And that is a semi-effective way of doing it, where it really depends on the closeness into the project that you are. You can see right now when I click it, it is changing by 1/4 of an inch every time I move. If I zoomed way in and I did that, now it's going to change by 0.05. There's a much easier way to place this exactly 1/2 inch from the top of the project. It all starts with the idea that the center line of the project, this gray line right here, is the 0 point for up and down. That means that anything above this line is positive, anything below this line is negative. This will make sense to you in just a moment. I'm going to come up and hover over this construction guideline, right click on it, the menu will pop up. Now there's two areas in the guide properties box. The first one is the selected guide, and the second one is the create new parallel guide or guides. Right now we're going to focus on the first section of the box, the selected guide, which is the one we right-clicked that made this box pop up. You can see right now the current position of that guide is 9.05. We want to place it exactly 11.5 inches above the center line of this project piece. So in order to do that, we're going to come into the new position box where it says 9.05. We're going to type in 11.5 and click apply. Now you're going to watch this line move when I do this. I click apply, and it has now repositioned itself at 11.5 inches above the center line or 1/2 inch off the edge of the material. So that one is positioned. Now we need another one that's actually on the other side, 11.5 inches down from the center line. That's going to be in the negative space of this project, or the negative side of this axis line. So we're going to use the bottom section of this guide properties box where it says create new parallel guides. The first thing is we're going to reference off this center line again. So that means we need to have the absolute position selected. That means it's going, whatever dimension we put in, it's going to be absolute relative to this center line on the project. Since it's negative, and it's going to be a negative 11.5, we're going to come into the position offset, double click it, and type minus 11.5. When I select the create new guide, you'll see down at the bottom, it'll create a new guideline. I click it, and there is our new guideline. So now we have that construction set up to give us the setup for our handle and our area where the pizza is going to be sitting. We're going to close this guide properties box. Now we want to move this rectangle upper line so it is on this guideline, and the center of the rectangle is on the intersection point of the guideline and the up and down line. Likewise, we want the handle, the lower rectangle of the handle, to be on this lower construction guideline, and the center of it to be right where these two lines intersect right here. So what we're going to do is snap it into place. And in order to do that, we have to have our snap function turned on. Snapping allows the software to snap your lines, your circles, whatever it is, to different locations on your project. Your snap function buttons are these two buttons right up here at the top of the screen. And the way to tell if they're turned on or off is if there's a box around them. You can see both of these icons have boxes around them. If I click this first icon once, that box disappears, and that means that that icon is now turned off, and that snap feature will no longer be active. We want that to be active, so we want the first two to be clicked and have that box around them. So we are ready to go. Come to the rectangle, the big rectangle where the pizza is going to be sitting, and double click that line. When you do that, you'll have beads that come up in the middle right here. You'll have them on the corners. You'll have them in the middle of the line there. All the way around, you'll have a bead right in the center. You look at my cursor now, it has that cursor arrow, but it also has a very small four-way arrow. And that indicates that I am now in the move function, where I can actually move this project around. But I have to actually have my cursor directly on any element of this line or of this rectangle, so meaning up here, over here. And you notice when I cross into that line, my cursor changes to a four-way arrow. That means I can now grab that rectangle and move it around relative to where I'm clicking on it. Right now, I'm going to press the left mouse button down with this four-way arrow, and I've now grabbed that rectangle at that point, and I can drag it around wherever I want. And when I let go of the left mouse button, that rectangle has now repositioned itself. Here's the magic of the snap function and this move function combined. When we come back up and hover over that, we get the four-way arrow. And then you see there's a dot right in the center of the upper line of this rectangle. When I move my cursor over to the middle of that dot, you see that the cursor changes to a crosshair with a couple little arrows coming out diagonally and the four-way arrow. That means it has snapped to the center point of that line, and I can now grab it right at that center point and reposition this rectangle the way I want to. So I'm going to hold the left mouse button down, and I can now move it around. My cursor is now looking a little funny. It's got a little squiggly line below it. That means that I can pretty much go anywhere I want. But what we want to do is come up to the center line, and you see it kind of jumped over to that. That means it's snapping to that center line. When I pull it off, it's going to jump back again. And then I'm going to move it up. And as soon as it gets close to that construction line, it's going to jump onto the construction line, just like that. That means it's snapped to the construction line. I can let the mouse go. This rectangle, the big one, is now in position. Now we need to move the small rectangle in position down here using the same method. So we're simply going to double click the small rectangle so we have the same buttons showing up. And we're going to hover over the bottom line until that cursor turns into that crosshair with the diagonal arrows coming out of it. Click your left mouse button, simply drag it down, follow the center line, and it'll snap to that lower construction line. And when it does that, we can let it go, and we have now created a very basic pizza peel shape. But we want to make this all one element. This is one solid piece of wood, and so we have to create it in the software so it will be also one solid piece of wood. So we're going to use the trim function to get rid of these two little areas right here. So it's one continuous line all the way around from the handle to the pizza flat area and back into the handle. And we do that by using an edit object feature called the trim function. That's these scissors right here. It looks like scissors. It's acting like scissors. It's cutting the lines. Select that and a box will open up. You want to make sure that the little check box down at the bottom is checked. That will make sure that when you cut these lines, they will reconnect themselves to the other lines that are existing. Here is what I mean. I'm going to uncheck this box and come out into this rectangle, and you see I have a pair of scissors, and when I hover over that line, the scissors open up, which means I'm ready to cut. So when I click my left mouse button, it cuts. I come down to that line, the scissors open up, and it cuts again. So we're done cutting that. So I'm going to close this and select the big rectangle right here. And you see it's all selected, but the handle is not selected. What that means is I have two separate vectors where these two endpoints are simply meeting together, but they are not connected. We want them connected. So I have to back up on what I've done here. There are multiple ways to back up. The easiest way to back up is to hold the control button down and click the Z button while you're holding the control button down twice, and we have got it. So we're going to go back into the trim function, the scissors, and click that checkbox, turn it on, and come back out and trim the same area, there and there. And we are done, so we can either close this there or hit the escape button, and that will take us out of it. Now I'm going to click the big rectangle the same way. And when I click that, you notice that the handle has now been selected as well. That means that we have one solid continuous vector, and that is what that little checkbox does. And this is important. So now we have our basic one piece of wood pizza peel shape. At this point, I am going to guess that you've already picked up quite a few tips and tricks in the Vectric software. If you've gotten something out of this already, can you take a second, and right below this video is a thumbs up button. Will you take a second and press that? Let me know that I'm doing a good job teaching you this stuff. And also, if you're relatively new to this stuff and you want to become from beginner to advanced beginner to intermediate really quickly, get on this channel, subscribe to it. What we're going to do now is we are going to take those two rectangles that we just positioned, and we're going to turn them into this nice organic shape with these nice rounded features on it. And then we're going to start working on that taper. That's super easy to do, and you'll be blown away at how easy it really is. idcwoodcraft.com. We are going to pretty up the pizza peel in two stages. The first stage will be the area around the handle of the fillet. We're going to round out the end of the handle, the corners where the handle meets the pizza platter area, and we're going to smooth out the corners of the pizza platter area over here. So the first thing we want to do is soften down this outer corner of the pizza platter on both sides. The way you do that is to grab a polyline. So you're going to create a new vector with a straight line, select it, and simply come down and hover over this corner. You'll see the cursor will pop into that corner. When it creates a square with a crosshair in it, we are snapped to that corner. Select that and come over somewhere in this area right in here. Do not bring your line up to that point here because it'll be too exaggerated as far as the shape of the pizza peel, the way we're going to soften it down. So you simply want to come about halfway, maybe a little bit more, and now we have created that line. Now we have to draw a new line on the other side that's going to be identical to this line. And the way to restart drawing a line without exiting the line mode is by hitting the space bar on your keyboard. When I hit it, the line has terminated, but I am still in line draw mode. So now you come over to the other corner, and when you get the same cursor, it has snapped onto that corner. And what you want to do is simply hover over the intersection point where the line is touching the side of the project. And just hover there for just a moment. What that's doing is telling Vectric that we're going to use that point as our reference point for the end point of the line that we're drawing right now. And so you notice as I'm moving across, I have a dashed line going across my screen. That means that Vectric has picked that up and it's using it as a reference to where I'm going to snap to. Once I get over the intersection of that dashed line to the other edge of the pizza peel, click my mouse, and now I have that line. Now we need to get out of line mode. You simply press the escape button. Now we simply need to trim out these two corners by using the scissors. So I'm going to select the scissors, make sure the check box is checked, which it'll stay checked if you have it checked before. So it'll default to that, and simply cut those two corners away. Close the scissors, and now we're going to round out these corners with fillets or radiuses. We're going to put a large radius on these two corners, a little bit smaller radius on this corner where the handle meets the pizza peel, and then we're going to put a smaller radius on the handle. To do that, we're going to use the fillet command under Edit Objects. Under Edit Objects, the third row of icons down, the one all the way to the left, is the fillet command where it says fillet, create fillet between spans. Select that, and you'll see in the fillet area that there are multiple selections that you can choose from. You want to have a normal fillet or a normal radius, so make sure that is selected. And then we're going to do first the corners of the pizza peel here and here. And we're going to make it a 4-inch radius. So simply put a 4 in the text box at the top of the Create Fillets area. And come over, hover over the corner, and click. And now we have a fillet. And now we're going to hover over this corner and click as well. And now we have a nice rounded edge. Now putting a 4-inch fillet here with a handle, when I click, you can see the handle is now getting too short. It's about 4 inches. It doesn't hold well in the hand. So when you do that, you can undo that fillet simply by clicking again, and it goes back. We're going to make this a smaller fillet. We're going to use a 2-inch radius. So we'll go into the fillet text box, change that to a 2, and come down and simply click on the corners. Now we have a nice looking handle. For the end of the handle, this is 2 inches wide, so we're going to use a 1-inch fillet on this corner and this corner. Change the number to 1, select the corner, select the other corner, close, and we're now ready to go with that. We have now finished this end of the pizza peel and gave it a nice, elegant, organic shape. We still have to put in the drill hole, and of course we have to get the taper and the roundedness on this end. However, we can't do the roundedness here yet until we define the taper. That requires doing something a little bit differently, and we have to know a few things. We have to determine where the pizza peel platter part ends and starts to turn into a taper, and we need to know that distance from that corner to the end of the the taper and the end of the pizza peel. So we're going to set that up first. It's super easy, but it's very specific based on a few things which you will understand in a little while. So let's get back into this thing and show you this thing. It's so easy. It doesn't require 3D modeling. It doesn't require a molding tool path, drive rails. This is the way we should be doing this kind of stuff. Let's get back into the software and I'll show you exactly what I mean. idcwoodcraft.com. We are going to start creating the taper profile first. That has to be created independently of the pizza peel that we have designed here. And the way we're going to do that is by starting a second layer. Layers are different levels that you can draw on so that you can remove them, turn them off, modify them. I've created a video that explains exactly what layers are and how to use them in your designing and why you want to be using them when you're designing a project. The link for that video will be down below in the description. So we're going to create the taper layer for the pizza peel. Now you notice at the top of the screen where my mouse is flashing, there's a blue bar. When I hover my mouse over that area, the blue bar pops up. It says Layer 1. Layer 1 is where we have designed this basic pizza peel. When you click that, a box opens up and that box has all the layers in it. And layer 1 is the one we've been drawing on. That is the actual pizza peel shape. So what we want to do is give that layer a name so we clearly know what it is. And the way you do that is simply click right on the word layer 1 and it'll turn blue. And we're going to give that a name. We're going to call it peel shape. And simply click in the white space here in order for this name to take. Do not click out in this area. Click anywhere in the white space, and now we have renamed that layer to peel shape. In order to create the taper, we have to create a new layer. So at the bottom of this box, it says add new layer. Select that and a new layer pops right in, and immediately we can edit the name of the layer. So we're simply going to type in taper, T-A-P-E-R. And there's a little black box next to that. Select that box and change the color to a color that is different from what we've been working with, which down here is black. So I like to choose red for my second layer. So I select the red and you can see now that black box has turned red. The other thing you have noticed is the word taper is bold relative to the word peel shape. And now up top it says taper. That means we have the taper layer active, and all the drawing that we're going to be doing from here on out is going to be on that layer until we change layers. So now click anywhere out in the drawing area to close that box. Now we want to get the rounded shape of the top of the pizza peel where the actual platter starts, meaning we are going to be getting this first top circle drawn into the shape. Go to the circle command where you draw vectors, select circle. Don't worry about any of the data in the circle box. Simply come over and hover over the vertical center line of the project. Anywhere that you want, as long as it's somewhere along the wide area of the taper. In other words, don't select down here where it's turning into a curve. So be up here. When you're hovering over the center line, you'll notice that it turns into a dashed center line. That means we are locked onto that line or snapped to the line. Press and hold the left mouse button and then drag out to the left or to the right until you actually touch the edges of the pizza peel. It'll snap to it just like that. You can see it snapping when I do that. When it's snapped, we're ready to release the mouse button, and we've created a circle for this pizza peel. Close the circle command, and we have to move this to the proper position. This is the top edge of the pizza peel. In other words, the circle that we just drew that is right now sitting up over top of the pizza peel is this part of the peel right here, where the taper ends and the platter starts. We need to pull that circle down to a very specific location below the top of the pizza peel if we are going to make this taper thing work the way we need it to work. So I'm going to teach you now exactly how to get that circle moved to the exact location for this taper technique to work. This top edge needs to be 2 inches below this edge right here. In order to make sure that we get it to the exact position, we need to create a new guideline, which is a very cool little technique that you're going to learn about guidelines. We have this guideline right here that already exists. So we want to create a guideline that's 2 inches below it. The way you do that is hover over the guideline, and when you have your double arrow cursor, right click and you'll bring the guide properties line dialog box back up. Down at the bottom where it says create new parallel guides, you don't want absolute position selected, you want relative to guide selected. What we are doing is we're going to create a new guide that is relative to the position of the existing guide we just clicked on. So that means we have to select relative to guide. This number box should be 1. We'll talk about that in another video, but basically if I have multiple numbers in here, a 2 or 3, it's going to create multiple guides. We only want one guide. And the position that we want to offset that guide is -2. In other words, it's going to be relative to this current guide in the negative direction. So we're going to just change that number to -2 and select create new guides. And voila, we have a new guide that is 2 inches below this existing one. On the circle, it is highlighted. Select it again so we get the beads around that circle. Zoom in a little bit by scrolling your wheel on your mouse and come up and hover over the upper quadrant intersection or the 90-degree point, and you'll see the cursor turns into a square target. That means we've locked on to that end of the quadrant of the circle. Hold the mouse button down and simply drag down until it snaps to that intersection point, which it just did, and now that circle is exactly where we want it to be. Now hit the escape button, and you notice that that circle is red. That's because we created this on the taper layer and we colored it red. So this edge is the top of the pizza peel tray, and the pizza will be flat in this area. Now we're going to create this rounded taper area that will come up to this intersection point here. To do that, select the circle, and then in offset and layout, the very first icon to the left says offset selected vectors. Select that, and we want to create another circle on the outside of this existing circle that is 2 inches out from this one. So you want to be on the outside right selected. So change the distance to 2. And you notice I have select new checked. That means that when it creates the new circle, it will turn into the selected item, or in other words, it will be the dashed item. You'll see what I mean. Right now, this circle is the selected item. So when I click offset, it created a new circle and has turned that into the selected circle, which you know by the dashed lines. This one is no longer the selected circle. Now we have that arc at the edge of our pizza peel. But we need to add another circle to the outside in order for this taper to work the way we want it to work. So simply select offset again, and it creates a second circle on the outside. Now we're done creating the circles, we can close the offset command and simply click in the middle to deselect everything. So we have 3 red circles and we have the pizza peel on top. What we're doing right now is creating the taper form, and then we're going to create the end of the pizza peel itself. Now the middle circle we do not need to have on the taper layer. It needs to move back to the pizza peel layer. And very easy to do. Select that circle, right click on your mouse. A menu will pop up that will give you some options of how you can manipulate this line that we have just right clicked on. Down at the bottom, it says Move to Layer, and you'll see that a little menu that pops up to the right says Peel Shape, Taper, and New Layer, and you notice there's a check next to Taper. That means that that object is on the taper layer. In order to move it, simply come up and click Pizza Peel or Pizza Shape, and that's it. When I click off, you can see now this circle is black. That means it's now moved back to the pizza peel layer. So we're going to get the pizza peel layer out of our way for right now while we create this taper tool that we are actually creating. In order to do that, go up to your layers section, select it. There's a little light bulb next to pizza or peel shape. Click that light bulb, and you'll notice that it turns off, and you'll notice that the pizza peel has now disappeared, and so has that circle that we just created. We want to make sure that taper is still in the blue box. If you're set up like that, you're good to go. So click over in the drawing area just to turn off that menu, and we are going to draw a line across the center of this circle. So get your polyline tool, select it, and come down and hover around the 180-degree area of the quadrant of the circle. And you'll notice that the cursor now has a black dot on the circle. And as we move up the circle, the cursor will change into a square target. That means that we have now snapped on to the exact 180-degree point. Click the left mouse button, and we have a line, and then just come across, and you see there's a dotted line that has formed to the right of the line that I am starting to create. That means we are perfectly horizontal across that circle, which is what we want. We want to create that line all the way to the 0-degree angle of the circle. So hover over that edge, and the cursor will change again to a square target. Click that, and now that we have a line going all the way across. Press the escape button on your keyboard to get out of line mode. And then click anywhere to deselect that line. Now we just need to do a little bit of cutting. So grab your scissors and come to that middle of the line and cut it, and then cut the lower half of the circles. And then close the cutting command. Now you see we have this inverted half moon type of shape. This is where our taper is going to be created. And we are done with this little aspect. Now we're going to go back to the pizza peel and finish off the shape of the pizza peel. The reason we went this route before finishing off the shape of the pizza peel is because we needed this arc in place and to define the arc before the pizza peel was done. Well, the important element is done for this taper. We have created the shape that we needed to create in order to get this taper created just like that. So we need to go back now and finish off the shape of the pizza peel itself at the end. We're going to create this roundedness, and we're going to radius off these two ends right here. So let's do it. So let's go back to the pizza peel layer by going up to the layer and turn the pizza peel layer back on, or the peel shape back on, by clicking the light bulb. And we're going to turn off the taper layer by clicking the light bulb next to it. And then you want to make the pizza peel shape active. So you notice that taper right now is red here and red here. That means it's an active layer that is turned off. Select the peel shape layer, and you'll notice that peel shape is now popped up there. We're on the peel shape layer, and we're going to finish off the shape of this peel, and it's going to look very nice. Get the scissors and cut the two upper corners of the pizza peel. 1, 2. And then come to the side of the circle, either side, left or right, and cut the circle on both sides. There and there. Now you notice we've got a little section left here. We are not going to cut that because that'll cause a segment in our pizza peel that we don't want. So we're simply going to close the scissors, select that little line and just hit the delete button. The pizza peel shape is almost done with this little exception. We got a little corner going on that doesn't flow well with the rest of the pizza peel. So we're going to go back to the fillet tool and round these off. Under Edit Objects, third icon, third row down, first icon to the left, select it, and in that box, put a 2, and then come over and select that corner, and we have now rounded out our pizza peel. We now have a complete pizza peel shape. It's nice and rounded, just like it is right here, where you see the edges are rounded here. We got a nice arc going around there, rounded there, nice flowing form. This part of the pizza peel is done. Now I'm going to turn the taper layer back on by coming up to layer, clicking that, get in the menu box and clicking the light bulb, and you can see now what we have. We've got multiple construction lines. We've got the pizza peel taper line and the pizza peel shape. We're now going to add one more thing, which is the hole to hang the pizza peel if somebody wants to hang it. So we're going to zoom in a little bit to the handle. And the way we're going to create this hole is by using the same router bit that we are going to be using to cut out the pizza peel, which is a 1/4 inch compression bit. And to drill a hole with a end mill, it is best to use a spiral drilling technique. And when you spiral drill, you want the hole to be bigger than the bit. So the bit is going to be a 1/4 inch in diameter. So we're going to create a 3/8 inch diameter hole right here. Under Create Vectors, click Circle, and in the dialog box, select Diameter. And in the diameter inches area where you can add text, simply put in 0.375. And then come over to the radius on the handle and hover over that for just a moment. And what you're doing is telling Vectric we're going to use that as our reference point. This will enable us to put the hole exactly in the center of this radius. So you notice that when I start to come up, there's a line, a dashed line again. So that's our reference point. So we're simply going to come up over that center point. The cursor is now changed to a round target. That means that we are on the center or have snapped to the center of that radius. So we simply click once and we've now created a 3/8 inch diameter circle. We're going to close the circle command and we now have everything here. Now we've got a little bit of confusion that couldn't be a little messy in the image. We've got these construction lines showing up and we don't need them anymore. But we may be able to use them later. So what we want to do is simply turn them off. And the way to turn them off is if you look in the ruler bar where the two ruler bars or scales intersect, up in the corner there's a little crosshair box. When you select that box, the construction lines will turn off. If you need them to show up again, simply click inside the ruler once and it will turn back on. And then we can go back and turn it back off. And that's it. You and I have finished designing this pizza peel, and it's now time to start generating the tool paths to cut all this out. Isn't it kind of cool that we've taken two rectangles and turned it into this type of shape? Nice, gentle curves, organic type of looking, very natural pizza peel type of looking pizza peel. And we've also set ourselves up to do this taper, which everybody seems to struggle with trying to figure out how to do, which is super duper easy, and you're going to find out exactly how in just a little bit. Now, before we get on to that, I want to just kind of pat you on the back for hanging around so long. I have dove deep into this and I've shown you a lot of different tools and tips and tricks and techniques. And if you feel like you have gained some little inkling of knowledge that you didn't know before, then please give me a thumbs up down below in that little thumbs up thing just below, and a comment. I would like to know if there's something that I've missed, because I want to know and other people read your comments. So please leave a comment. If you're brand new to this stuff, then you want to subscribe to this channel, because this is how deep I go into this kind of stuff, because I want to make you the most amazing creator as fast as possible with the most amount of knowledge you can get. And that's exactly what you get on this channel. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. With that, I just want to remind you, down in the description, there's a bunch of links, and also the description that I leave, things that I miss in the video, I will put down below there as well. With that, it is time to head into doing the tool path on this, the stuff that we like to do, so we can actually start carving the sucker out. So let's get back into Vectric, and I'm going to teach you how to do the tool path, and of course, the cool taper. You're going to love this. Let's go. In order to create our tool path, now we have to switch over to the CAM section of our project. And the way you do that in the Vectric software is in the upper left corner, you'll see a little blue button right next to the question mark. Select that, and that will turn off the design area and turn on the CAM area where you create your tool paths. And the very first thing, as I said, is we are going to create the taper on the pizza peel. Now, we're going to take a quick look at the pizza peel that is already designed up, and I'm going to rotate it sideways so we can see the taper. The only way we can do this without using drive rails, a 3D model, or a molding tool path is by creating this with a shallow angle V-bit. The shallower the angle of the V-bit, the better taper we will have. And the V-bit, and this area is actually defined for the specific type of V-bit that we are using, which is a 150 degree V-bit. I've designed this specifically with the 150 degree V-bit that is in the IDC Woodcraft store because it is what I have. It is 150 degrees by 2 inches in diameter. Now, if you want to use a shallower V-bit, like a 120 degree V-bit, then you will have to change the size of this rounded half moon thing accordingly in the width here. But since this is designed for that 150 degree V-bit, we are going to rock and roll with it. So we want to do this in a V-carving toolpath, and that would be with the toolpath with the V on the button. Select that, and the first thing you want to do is select the red line so that it is highlighted. Set your start depth to 0 and turn off the flat depth, or make sure the box is unchecked. And then we need to select the 150 degree V-bit. Now, I am pulling from the IDC Woodcraft database. This is a database that you can have and download for free. I have a video that explains exactly how to download that file and where to get the file from. I will put a link in the description for that. And once it's imported, you'll have the IDC Woodcraft database in your Vectric software. Now, we're in a V-carving toolpath, so it's only brought up a few of the tools that are in the database. And in that database is the 150 degree V-bit. We select that and click select down there. And now the V-bit is set up here. And you want to make sure that the clearance tools is unchecked. We don't need to use that. The only other thing that we have to do is change the name of the toolpath, and we're going to call it taper, T-A-P-E-R. And I always like to put the tool after the name, so I'm going to put a 150V next to that, and then we will calculate it. And now you see we have generated toolpath lines on the project. When I press preview selected toolpath, it generates out the toolpath, and now we have that taper in the project, which is very, very cool. So that is done. Very easy way to do it once you get the hang of it. You don't have to have drive rails. You don't have to have 3D models. You just need to set it up according to the V-bit. Now, some people ask me, can I use a 120 degree V-bit? Yes, you can. It'll be a shallower taper or steeper taper. A 90 degree, I would not recommend. A 60 degree, absolutely not. I like the 150 because it creates a nice long taper on the end of the pizza peel. So now we have to go into the next toolpath, which is going to be the round over bit, or the rounding bit, to give it the character around the edges of the project. This roundedness that we have created all the way around the handle, all the way to the end, and at the top of the hole. This too is specifically set up with the IDC Woodcraft rounding bit. This is what's called a rounding bit or a round over bit, and it's also considered a form tool. Now, one of the things with the G code that I am providing for you, you have to have a specific roundover bit. It has to be one that comes down to a point like this one is right here. With roundover bits, you'll sometimes find them with a flat on the edge, just like that one has. This one here is an Amana. And this requires a little bit more of a special setup when it comes to doing what we're going to be doing when you want to create a roundover on your project. And it is actually a little more complicated to set those up, and that's specifically why I have designed the roundover bits in the IDC Woodcraft store to come down to a point so that you don't have to do any special offsetting, which you would have to do on a tool like this with this flat diameter that it technically has on the bottom of the bit. Let's zoom into that just a little bit so you can see that it is flat. That is actually a little more than a 32nd of an inch, almost a 16th of an inch in diameter. And that is going to mean that if you have a bit like this, you have to know how to offset it properly to make that roundover that we're going to create. I want to briefly explain to you what I mean by offsetting the tool. So we have a round over on this piece of MDF right here, and it rounds over and goes fairly smooth into the straight up and down cut. That is this bit, and it technically cuts right on the line of the design. You don't have to do any offsetting. If you're to use a bit that has the flat on it like this Amana bit does, if you did the same thing on the center of the tool, you're going to have a step going all the way along this whole rounded profile wherever you're using it. And so you have to learn how to offset that bit by the half of the diameter of that little flat spot there. And that's a little bit more advanced and takes some extra steps and thinking in the process as you're doing your design work. This pointed roundover bit avoids that extra step, which is an extra step that you can actually make mistakes on if you forget that you have to do it. With the IDC Woodcraft rounding bit, you do not have to do any step over. You just simply program the bit on the line as I'm going to show you right now. So we're going to close this and we're going to create that new tool path for the profile. So we're going to close that, and in order to see what we're going to be doing, we have to split our screen. So at the top of your screen there are several buttons. At the one at the very right, select that. That will split your screen so you can see both sides. And to do this type of profile with the roundover bit, we need to use the profile toolpath, which is the very first selection. Select that, and then first of all, select both the pizza peel shape and the drill hole shape. So we're simply going to come over here, hold our left mouse button down, and just drag across so we're touching both of them, and now they're both selected. In the toolpath, you want the start depth to be 0 and the cut depth to be just shy of the top of the roundover bit. In this case, the top of the roundover bit is going to be exactly 1/4 inch above the point. So we're going to change that to 0.245. And now we need to select the roundover bit, which is technically considered a form tool. I will not explain how to set up form tools. It's already set up in the IDC Woodcraft database under form tools. So if you want to use this data, then you can download the database that I have told you about just before. In the bottom it says form tools, and we're going to use the 1/4 inch radius form tool. We select that and press the select button. Now the form tool actually needs to be on the profile. In other words, the bit needs to run right along that line. The center axis of the bit will be on that line. So we have to tell it that that's exactly what we're going to do. So in these 3 buttons here, you want to have it set to on. Now climb and conventional, it doesn't matter which one you're set on. They both work. And then simply come down, give it the toolpath name without changing anything else. You don't need tabs or anything. And we'll just call this round over. Round over. And we'll say 14R. That stands for 1/4 inch rounding bit. And we calculate. Now, you see that we have created a toolpath where the bit starts in the center. It comes down and it cuts on the hole, and then it moves over to our pizza peel. Now, if we run that toolpath, this is what we have. We've created a round right here in the hole, and we've created a round all the way around the profile of the pizza peel, and it tapers off right here as it goes into the pizza peel taper. But there is something I noticed just then. When I click the little checkbox next to round over, we bring the toolpath lines up. And you notice that the toolpath starts over here, right on top of the project. And that could potentially leave a little bit of a mark that you would have to sand out. And we don't want to do that. Now, this is technically called the start point of this particular cut. If we split our screens again, and you notice right over here, there's a green dot. And it correlates or corresponds to where this red line is. That's because this is the start point that's defined in the line drawing that we've created. And we want to change that because we want the start point to be up in the taper part of it. So here's how we fix that. We're going to close the preview toolpath, switch here to start its carve. So we are now set up on that. Now we have one more thing to do, which is to cut our pizza peel out. Now, we want to get rid of these lines, and the way you do that is down here, it says Toolpaths. Next to it is a checkbox. Simply click it, and that'll turn off those lines. Finally, we are going to cut this puppy out, and we are going to do this with a 1/4 inch compression bit. I told you earlier in the video that I would explain to you what a compression bit is and why we are going to be using it. We have 3 different types of 1/4 inch end mills here that we can use on our CNC router. And all 3 of these are IDC Woodcraft branded bits. The first tile that we have is the upcutting bit. So when the router bit is turning in that direction, it is grabbing the chips or cutting the chips and throwing them upward out of the project. And as it's doing that, what it will do is it will literally rip the top of the project, and it's something that's called tear out. Now, with a down cutting bit, well, that's this one here, the spiral goes the other way when it's turning, so that will push the chips downward into the cut. The benefit to a down cutting bit is, let's flip this over, the bit is cutting through the material and it's leaving a very clean edge on the top. There will be no tear out. But if you were cutting through the project, then there would be tear out at the bottom, and that would be something you would have to sand. Tear out on the top or tear out on the bottom, you'd have to sand it. Sometimes tear out, you will literally break out chips of the material of the wood. This, of course, being MDF, that's going to be a little bit different. Now, when it comes to a compression bit, it is literally a combination of the up bit, this one, and the down cutting bit. So as it's turning, you can see it has down cutting spirals, which means it's pushing the chips down, and that is going to eliminate tear out at the top of the cut. At the bottom of the cutter, you can see there's a reverse in direction in the spiral. And so that way it will pull chips upward. So when you're actually breaking through the project, the lower edge of this compression bit is actually pulling chips upward. So what it's doing is bringing the chips up from the bottom, preventing tear out at the bottom. In the meantime, the down cutting or down shear action at the other end of the bit is cutting chips downward, and it eliminates the tear out on both top and bottom. And that is why we are using this bit. So it looks a little funny, but it works. The other thing that it has on it is the bottom cutting flutes right here. You will find that on a typical upcutting bit just like that. So you can do some minor peck drilling with this if you set yourself up properly. Whereas a down cutting bit does not have those forward cutting spirals on the bottom, so you can't peck drill with a down cutting end mill. So this is a combination type of bit that works very well in many applications. And the reason we're using it on this project is because we are literally going to be cutting out the pizza peel all the way around. And so we want to have clean edges on the top and clean edges on the bottom so we don't have to sand or have very minimal sanding. And that, my CNC friend, is why we are using the compression bit on this project. So you close the toolpath, or the preview, and this is going to be another profile pass. In other words, a profile is the tool will actually ride around the profile of the part. Now we need to profile both the outside to cut it out and the inside of the hole. We are going to do this separately, create the hole and the profile of the bit in two separate tool paths, but it will be using the same tool. If you remember, we decided we were going to be using the 1/4 inch compression end mill. And we're going to be using a technique called spiral drilling to actually drill this hole out. And then we will cut the other part of the project out. So you remember we changed the size of the circle to be bigger than the 1/4 inch compression end mill. This circle is 3/8 of an inch in diameter. And we did that so we can use this very cool technique called spiral drilling. But right now we have the circle and the outside profile selected. So just click in the white space to deselect them both and then reselect the circle. Then we want to go into the profile toolpath. In the Vectrix software, it is the very first toolpath that is in your little icon list. Select it, and the first thing we have to do is set the depth. Since this is a hole that is going all the way through the material, we need to change the setting, which is 0.245 to 0.7, which is the actual depth. Now, the easiest way to do this, to change your cut depth, is simply select whatever is in the field, and when you're going to be going through it, just type in Z equals, and that will plug in your material thickness. Then we have to change the tool. So right now it is on the 1/4 inch form tool, the roundover bit that we did the rounding to. We're going to change that to the compression end mill. So hit select, and on the IDC Woodcraft database, just find the compression end mills and select the 1/4 inch compression end mill. And click select. That is now set up. Now the other thing that we have to pay attention to is this hole is going to be inside the circle. So we have to tell the software that we're cutting out the inside of the circle. If we leave the setting to on right now, it'll actually cut out some of this radius here, and we don't want that. So you want to select inside left. And then here comes the important part to enable you to get a nice drill function going on here in this spiral drilling. Come down to the ramp area, and if you do not see this, then go back to the top of the cutting depths for the 2D profile toolpath, and you'll see a little checkbox underneath the cutting depths. That checkbox is there to show you advanced features. And the advanced features are the ramps and some other things that are down here at the bottom. And I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to uncheck that, and that whole thing disappears. So click that checkbox, and you'll get these advanced features. So you want to be on the ramps tab, check the box that says add ramps to toolpath, and then you'll have 3 selections: smooth, zigzag, and spiral. You want it to be on spiral. And what that will do is that will allow the bit to spiral all the way down the hole, and then when it gets to the end, it'll make one more sweep around the entire diameter of the hole and then pull out. It's a very quick and efficient operation. and then go down to the bottom and we're going to rename it. So we're going to call this hole, H-O-L-E, and then we're going to put the tool name after it, 14CMP for the 1/4" compression bit. Then calculate. And if you look at this little icon right now, or at the toolpath that has been generated, you see it's got this kind of corkscrew shape. That's the exact toolpath that is going to be taken. So it's going to ramp down in this corkscrew way, and at the bottom it's going to take one final twist around it and then pull back out. Now, one of the things with this is that with a slow plunge rate, that can actually take some time. So we will need to increase the plunge rate on this to basically be the standard feed rate of the router bit. So go back to the whole 14CM, double click it, and where the tool is selected, the compression end mill, click the edit button. And our ramp plunge rate is right now 30 inches per minute, which it'll work. It'll just be a little bit slow. I'm going to change it to the actual feed rate, which is 80 inches per minute. It's good practice whenever you're doing a ramp cut in this type of fashion using a spiral to change the plunge rate to equal the feed rate, because the ramping is actually tapping into the plunge rate. And when you have a big long ramp that you're doing, it can take forever, and because the bit would be going a little slower than it's normally meant to go, you can actually dull up your bit quicker. So in this ramping, whenever you're ramping, you want to use the feed rate of the bit. Okay, we'll click OK and recalculate. Scroll down to the bottom. There we go. And now that is set. So the hole is done, and I'm going to preview the selected toolpath, and there is our hole, nice and cool and clean and rounded and all the way through the project. Now it's time to cut the rest of the project out and have this amazing pizza peel shape. And the way we do that is simply go back into the profile toolpath, which is the first one again, select that. And the first thing we're going to do after that is select the pizza peel shape and deselect the circle. Just go over and select the pizza peel shape, and the circle should deselect when you do that. In the 2D toolpath, our depth is already set at 0.7. The compression end mill is already in there because the Vectric will default to the previous tool that you've had in there. We don't really need to change anything else with the exception of the outside right. If you remember, we just drilled the hole on the inside of the circle. If we leave that setting, then the pizza peel will cut out on the inside of the profile. So we need to simply change that to outside right. We do not need to add ramps to this one. Just leave the ramps unchecked, and we'll give it the final name. We're going to call it Cutout 14CMP and calculate. There is a little bit of a problem that I see here. It's not a critical problem, but it is something we want to take into account. What this is telling me is that the start of this particular tool path will be at this part of the project. The router bit will start from the center and come over to this edge and dive down into the material. And that can have a tendency to leave a little bit of a mark right in this area. It's a tool mark that happens when you're plunging into materials or where the tool path stops. And that will make for a little bit of sanding, and it can actually leave a little bit of a cusp kind of shape on the inside of your project right here. So we want to change this position to somewhere where it's not going to have influence on any of the detail of the cutout. That would mean we want it to plunge into the material anywhere up here where that won't become as much of an issue. So there's a particular reason why Vectric has chosen this location, and I want to teach you something new so you understand. We're going to close this toolpath and return to the design side. So that would be pressing the blue arrow button at the upper right of the toolpaths menu. And that will switch us back over to design. Now we're going to expand this screen by clicking the middle square button between the minus and the X. And that will broaden that back out. And we'll zoom out so we see the whole project. In these projects, whenever the software draws lines, it creates something called nodes. Nodes are transition points from one line to the next, or a curve to a straight line. So we want to take a look at those nodes. And the way you do that is by selecting the item you want to check out, which is the overall shape. And then we're going to hit the letter N in Vectric, N for Nancy. When we hit that, if you notice over in this spot right here, there's a green node that has popped up. Anywhere else, there is either a black node or up atop, a blue node there and there. What this green node is telling you is that is the start point of the router bit. When I split the screen and we orient this project back over, you can see that the router bit actually comes over to the same point as that node. So that green node is the start point. So we're going to change it. It's very simple in the Vectric software. We want the router bit to come in somewhere around the taper, perhaps on a little corner right there or up in the middle. We're going to set it to the middle of the taper, right here. So what you have to do while you're in node mode, and you know you're in node mode when you have these nodes showing up and your cursor looks like an arrow without a tail on it. Hover over that node and you'll see it, the cursor turns into a square target. Hit the letter P for Paul on your keyboard and you'll notice that the node has now changed color on the blue node. And the node that was selected over here is now a black node. So we have literally changed the start position of the router bit. We're going to deactivate node by hitting N again. That turns it off. Going to go back over to toolpath. And with cutout selected, right click and come down to recalculate in the menu. And a second menu will pop up and simply click recalculate. And you'll get a notice that the toolpath was recalculated. And notice the red line now is coming up to this part of the project. In fact, we should probably recalculate everything so the rounding bit will also start up in this area as well. To recalculate everything, right here is a calculator. It's the fourth row of icons down to the very right, and when you hover over it, it says recalculate all toolpaths. That's exactly what we want to do. You select that and all toolpaths have been recalculated. Now we're going to go back in and take a look at the whole project by hitting this little icon at the very bottom left. Select that and that'll bring up your preview screen and simply click preview all toolpaths. All the toolpaths are now selected. Now rotate that around. We're going to expand this screen by selecting a little box in that window. And then double click the material on the outside of this cut. And there is our finished project. Now we have not used tabs in this because we are going to hold this down using the CA glue method. That is a technique that I have discussed in other videos. I will show you briefly as we go through the setup of this project. But here we are. Everything is done. There's one more thing we have to do, and that is to change our start point of the project. I'm going to split the screen for just a moment. And you notice that our start point right now, or our 0 point, is in the middle of the project. The problem with that is you have to find that location manually, and that can be prone to error. So what we want to do is use the touch plate to set our tool 0 position, and you want to set it off the corner so you can take advantage of the touch plate, just like you see right here where the touch plate is zeroing out a drill bit on the corner of the material. So we're going to take care of that by a simple fix. Close the preview toolpaths section Up top of the material setup in the Vectric software is a button that says Set on it. Select that button, and in the XY datum area, there is a square with a blue dot in the middle. That's telling the software that we are starting in the middle of the project. We simply want to change that to the lower left corner, which is the traditional place that we start these types of projects. Select that. Your screen will change a little bit. Click OK, and the software is going to ask you, do you want to recalculate now because you've changed the start point? You want to say yes. And then it's going to tell you that it did. We click OK, and if you look in the 3D model here, you can now see the red lines are not coming from the middle of the project, but from the lower left corner of the project. And that's how we want to set it up. So we're going to run that out real quick. And you see that we still have the same project. Now it's time to save our toolpaths. In order to save our toolpaths, you want to close the preview screen and go to this little save button right here. At the bottom row of all the icons to the most right end of the icons, when you hover over it, it says Save Toolpath. Select that. You'll have several selections at the top. You want to select Visible Toolpaths to Multiple Files, and underneath it, Group Where Possible. What that means is if there are multiple toolpaths with the same router bit, it will group them as one. That means you'll have 3 tool loads or G-code loads rather than 4. And then at the bottom, select the little checkbox next to the word toolpaths. And you see that checks have popped into all these boxes here. That means that we are good to go. And as long as you have your post processor set up, if you look up here, it says toolpaths to be saved. It has taper 150, round over, hole, and cutout. That means we are saving all the toolpaths. Click the button Save Toolpaths. Make sure you're in the directory you want to be in, and I am in that, Pizza Peel. Give it a name that is generic to the project. It'll come in with the name that is the first toolpath. You see this toolpath is Taper 150V, and it has brought in that name, Taper 150V. We want to change that to Pizza Peel. Click the Save button. And you want to go to the directory by bringing up your directories. And here we now have our toolpaths created. We're going to bring this right over here so I can zoom this screen appropriately for you so you can see everything. You can see here we have 3 toolpaths created, but there are 4 toolpaths down here. So the first one is Taper 150V. The second is Roundover 14R, and the third one is Hole 14CM. But I want you to notice the number next to Pizza Peel. Well, first of all, the reason we call it Pizza Peel is so it plugs in the name Pizza Peel in front of every one of these, so we know exactly what these are. Then we have the number in front of it. It says Pizza Peel 1. That corresponds to the first toolpath, which is right here, Taper 150. Here it says Pizza Peel 2. That is the second toolpath, the roundover. And here it says Pizza Peel 3, 4. That means it has brought together both toolpath 3 and 4. So that's the way that it's going to be generated for you with the naming. And now it is time to load this into our control software and run these projects out. Before we set this project up, I do want to say hats off to you for hanging around so long, because this has been a long video, but you have learned a ton of stuff. If you feel like you've gained tips and tricks that you never thought you would have gained, then please take a moment and hit that thumbs up button down below. And even better, please leave a comment. Comments tell me if I'm doing the right stuff, and they help other people because other people do read the comments. So with that being said, if you're brand new to CNC routers, you might want to subscribe to this channel, because this is where you're going to learn. one of the few channels that just really deep dives into how this stuff works. Not just how to do it, but why it's working that way. Before we set this thing up in the control software, that's the machine that actually runs the long mill CNC router. This is the machine that I completely endorse after doing a ton of research. And if you're still in the market for a CNC router, then down in the description is a link to a video, a very deep dive review video on this machine. Before we actually get into setting this up on the machine, as far as the electronic side goes, we have to set the physical project up on the router. That means taking your 16-inch wide by 24-inch tall board and getting it held down. Now we're going to use a method called the CA glue method. That's a method that I use about 80% of the time. What's so cool about that is you don't use clamps with the CA glue method. There's no clamps whatsoever. So if you're brand new to this, you've never heard of it, you're going to learn a little bit about this right now. The CA glue is literally a super glue, and this is what I use. It's called Star Bond, and my viscosity of choice is the medium viscosity. We also need to use something called an accelerator. This helps set the super glue much faster, so when we put the project down, we only need to hold it for a few seconds and then it'll be held down permanently until we decide to pull it back up. You also need to use painter's tape, and you'll need a scraper. So we're going to get into how to set this up. It's very quick, very simple, and if you want to get the CA glue, Star Bond is my preference. Down below in the description is a link with a discount code so you can get the CA glue at a discount. So make sure to check that out down below. All right, let's get into the setup of the project on the long mill CNC router, and then we'll get it into the control software and start running this out. And it's very, very cool. This is what all this work is for, when you're actually seeing your project run out. To set yourself up with CA glue, it's very easy. You put painter's tape down on your work surface. Of course, you have to make sure it's clean first, and you want it to be at specific points that's going to match your project. Take your scraper and press it down, and then do the same on the project where the tape is lined up exactly with what you've done on the spoil board or the surface it's going to be mounted on. Then we get the medium CA glue. This is the one I prefer to use over thick or the thin versions. And we have the accelerator. Accelerator helps set the glue quickly. And then you run a bead all the way down each piece of painter's tape. Just like that. And I recommend you do it on a flat surface so it doesn't run off, because CA glue is super glue. And then spray your accelerator on each piece of tape, get the project lined up on the tape, and then push it down. And in about 10 seconds, you will be set. And just like that, you don't need clamps. Everything's held down really well as long as you press it down. I do advise that you put a little weight on it immediately. You have to do it immediately just to press everything down, especially if you have a warped piece of board. Now we're going to surface the project, because materials can vary. So you want that variation out. When I say vary, it can vary in the thickness. So we're removing that using the 1-inch diameter surfacing bit from IDC Woodcraft. It has taken a 70% step over cut. We're cutting at a 0.01 deep and running at 150 inches per minute. And you see it's a little rough there. That's the nature of pine. You're going to notice that as we move along. When we work with pine, it just ends up fuzzy and stringy. It's the way pine is. Next time I will make this out of something like walnut or a hardwood of some sort. So we're getting the project piece nice and flat. I'll throw in the surfacing program into the freebie that I'm giving you, the cheat code for this as well. Now we need to get ready and get set up. So you want to clean out your collet from any sawdust before you start. Now we're going to find the XY corner of the project, and that's where we're using the touch plate. I don't really care about the top of the material right now because I'm just setting the XY. Now we need to set our Z, and here is the 120 degree or 150 degree V-bit from the IDC Woodcraft store. This is the big Stiffy Series 150. They have shorter shanks on them. They're designed to reduce vibration. It's a 2-inch wide diameter bit. Now we set our Z, and it doesn't really matter where we set the Z at because we have surfaced the entire project. Once everything is set up, now we get into our control software and load our first program, which is the taper that we're going to cut. This is going to come out very, very cool for you. The control software I use is called G-Sender. Now, I've got a lot of videos that talk about this, so I'm not going to dive deep into it other than all I'm going to tell you is get the G-Sender control software for your CNC router. It's absolutely free. It is the most modern out there on the planet, and it's got a beautifully easy user interface. It comes from Long Mill. They have written it. It's optimized for the Long Mill, but it'll work on any CNC router out there that works on the Arduino circuit board. Now we're going to come over and load the first file, which is the taper file. So you come to the load file button, select it, and you'll see your first file there. We're going to load the Pizza Peel 1 Taper 150. This is using the 150 degree Big Stiffy IDC Woodcraft CNC router bit. And you can see now that the taper has now shown up in the project, and what you're looking at are all the tool paths that the bit is going to take. And we're simply going to hit the test run button right here, and what that's going to do is just going to simulate that it's running. Everything looked good, so now we have to turn on our CNC router, and after we do that, we're going to hit the start button. Set the spindle speed on the router to 2.5 if you have a Makita. Turn it on. And this is the fun part. This is where we make the easiest taper on the planet when it comes to designing these tapers. The fun part is you can create this taper in any shape you want to. As long as you follow the way that I told you to do it, you want the taper profile designed first and then go in and finish the profile of your project of the pizza peel with the taper line at the end. But this is where it gets really fun, especially when you have a bit that runs just like this. It's taking out a lot of material. If you're like me, after you've done all this creating, now you have this project actually starting to carve out, and it's such a rewarding experience. I really, really like this bit. It's actually a hard bit to find, and this is the perfect type of project to actually be using this type of 150 degree wide body bit to create the taper on your pizza peel. So you see, this pizza peel is not rocket science when it comes to this type of designing, and everybody does it in a very difficult way when all you have to do is use a V carving profile. The Long Mill CNC router. I really, really like this machine. That's why I endorse it. And if you're looking for a machine, it is also one of the most economical machines and still a very rigid, strong machine. I've got a review video on that. I can link that down below. It's actually about $1,000 less than its nearest competitor, and you can stand on the machine while it's cutting. I've done that in a demonstration in a video, so it's kind of cool. So let's let this run out. This takes about 10 minutes to finally clear out the entire V of the taper. Now half the taper is going to be worthless because it's on the outside. We want to cut this out at the bottom of the taper. This is the last part of the V cut, where it's cut in the very bottom of the taper. And this bit is also set up on the database, the IDC database. So there's the taper. You can see we've got a little bit of a step. This can be due to like back pressure on the wood. We have a wide cutter as well. So I might have to tweak the settings a little bit. We're going to have to sand that thing anyway, but now it's time to get our decorative curve around the profile by using the 1/4 inch rounding bit from IDC. And we're going to set the 0 on that for the Z. We already have our XY set, so we'd never have to touch that again. Now we get back into GSender and we load the next file. So hit the load button, find the rounding program, which is Pizza Peel 2. Double click, and there it is. And all we have to do now is click Start after we turn the router on and set the speed. If you have a Makita router, you just turn it to 3, turn it on, and the first thing it's going to do is do the round in the hole. Just a little circle, just like that. And you see there's some fuzzy in there. Again, that's just what Pine is all about. Now remember, we set this to start at the very end, and that's exactly what that's done. And now it's coming around, it's air cutting until it actually gets to the wood, and here it comes. This is where it also gets cool. Every part of this process is so much fun, but it's cool to see the contour of your pizza peel actually start to form now. And watching this thing just make these turns like it just did there. Well, because of Pine and how fuzzy it is, I went ahead and ran this a second time, this particular bit, just to try to smooth some of that out. But look at that, you've got the whole shape of the pizza peel. So now we know exactly what we have. Again, links for all this stuff is down in the description as well as getting on the download. There's the hole with a little nipple in it, and we are going to cut that out next. Pine, very, very fuzzy. You can see exactly what I'm talking about right there, even though I ran it twice. Now there, it's nice and clean, going all the way around, except when you're going across the grain. That's Pine. But look at that, we've got the entire pizza peel shape. Now it's time to get the 1/4 inch compression bit and start to cut this project out. So you've got this little 2 upcutting, up shear ends on it. We're going to set our 0. And of course, the very last file that we need to load up is the file that's going to drill the hole and cut the project out. So load file again. Get your pizza peel file number 3-4, load it up. So all we have to do again is turn the router on and hit start job. And the first thing we're going to do is drill the hole. Now watch how fast this is. Bam! We're going to do this again in slow motion so you can see what the spiral drilling technique actually does. When the router comes over, it starts to dive down, and then it goes into that spiral, just like that. And you'll watch when it gets down to the bottom, it's going to stop, and then it's going to go spin around one more time right there. And that hole is complete. That's how fast spiral drilling is. You can plunge in at the feed rate of the normal feed rate of the router bit. And now it's time to cut out the pizza peel. And here it comes into the wood. And this bit, of course, is also an IDC Woodcraft bit, and it's cutting so smoothly through this material and dead on the line. Swing around to make that curve. I don't use a dust shoe when I'm doing videos, so that's why that's like that. Now we're going to make our final pass around. And the pizza peel is done. Let's do some vacuuming up. And all we have to do is just peel up those corners because we've actually cut the whole project out. The fun part was actually peeling up the pizza peel because there's still so much holding surface down. But we got it. And then just have to peel away the tape. And things start to get real pretty. Let's evaluate how this has turned out. Now remember, we're using pine, which is a very fuzzy wood. So a little bit of an edge right there that we'll be able to sand out. So we've got pull up right here, a little bit of tear out. Let's see, right around there. So that must be from the up part of the flute on the compression bit. And we're a little rough right here. This is pretty typical of pine, because pine is such a fuzzy wood. And then we look at the hole right here, and you see that hole is very nice, rounded edge on it. We got the rounded edge all the way around. Boy, that is fuzzy. Overall, I'm quite happy with it. A little bit of a little tiny step here, but sanding is part of the job. So we're going to sand this up and clean it up, see how she looks. Sanding this took about 20 minutes. I used 100 grit on everything to get all the edges off, and then switched over to 220 grit, and that's where I stopped at. Now we can go higher, but when it comes to pine, I'm not going to worry about it. But the trick is getting inside this rounded area right here. You remember, just like you see here, that it came out very rough, and so we need to get inside of it, and there's a lightning fast way that I have found that you are going to love to sand that out by using these little sanding discs that will fit on the end of your Dremel. I love these things because they get into all kinds of weird areas, especially if you're doing inlays. Now you see these are all different colors, so each color represents a grit. And these things are super cheap. You get them off of Amazon, and they work so good, especially on inlays when you have to get into really tight corners. Now they don't last that long, maybe about 5 to 10 minutes a piece, but they're only about 5 to 10 cents a piece, so they're so worth it. I'll put a link down below in the description for the Amazon link, but I'll show you how quick it is to actually clean out the inside of the rounded part with that tool. It'll take you a lot longer to set the tool up than it will to actually sand this. And if you had to do it by hand, you'd be in there with a finger and trying to figure out how to get in there. Watch how fast this is. All you do is just run your brush around a few times. And that's it. This is almost perfectly sanded. Maybe a little bit more. Again, it's pine, but you got to get these things. I will link this down in the description. I'd say this thing came out pretty darn good. There's a little more touch up that has to be done. A little bit of an edge there and a little bit of stuff inside that hole. Nice rounded edges all the way around. Nice pizza peel shape for a nice large pizza. And a beautiful taper. Sanded that little top edge so it's nice and smooth. Got a little bit of rounded on that side. On the bottom, I could have done this as a two-sided job, but just sanded around here. I'm going to get my handheld router just to clean that up with a rounding bit on my router. That we'll figure something out. There it is. Pizza peel. Links for everything is down below in the description, including the download for this file. So make sure you check down in the description for the links for anything that I've talked about that you might have been interested in. With that, like the video, comment, subscribe if you're new. How much stuff have you learned? That's what I'd really like to know in the comment section. All right, go make your pizza peel, and with the easiest taper on the planet. I know this was a long video, but I really wanted you to get all the tips and tricks that I taught you. Have a great day, better tomorrow, and happy CNCing.